The moment those leaked Yacht Girl whispers resurfaced, everything Meghan Markle spent years carefully polishing began cracking like cheap glass under stage lights. And suddenly, Jimmy Carr wasn't just telling jokes anymore. He was holding up a mirror so brutal, so unforgiving, that even the most loyal defenders couldn't look away without feeling uncomfortable. Because this wasn't just comedy. This was exposure. This was humiliation unfolding in real time. This was the moment when Meghan's perfectly engineered victim narrative collided head-on with ruthless truth, and Jimmy Carr, with that cold smirk and surgical precision, sliced straight through the illusion she had spent years building. And the most devastating part wasn't even the laughter. It was how easily the audience believed every word of a documentary.
Meghan Markle has unfairly got a reputation for being a bit of a diva, but royal insiders say she's only ever made one demand. Don't leave her alone with Prince Andrew.
Fiancée, Miss Meghan Markle, is on the American program Suits.
Yes, Wednesdays, 8 p.m, USA Network.
The only difference between that show and this is people watch this one.
If you had lunch with Meghan Markle, you'd be stunned at how dumb she was. Not because she's black, because I wouldn't think she was black if I looked at her, because she's an actress who was on the show Suits.
Authentically, organically want to share. I go back to the authenticity, right? It's what I love and it's what I want to share. I wanted to do what felt authentic, but also to be authentic.
You're a cold-hearted woman.
Harry and Meghan are leaving the palace to become financially independent. And you see, this is what happens when you bring the first black woman into the royal family. Yeah. She looked at Harry and she's like, "Nigga, you need to get a job. You need a job. You a grown-ass man. You can't still be living in your mama's house, Harry."
Meghan Markle is somebody who obviously, at least for a period of time, was a close associate of Prince Andrew, and hence is in a position to perhaps have seen what he did, and perhaps, if not, to have seen what he did, to have heard people talk about it.
You're a cold-hearted woman, Sonia. I'll fucking show you, dying. I'm leaving you. Is it a weekend at Bernie's situation, Sonia? What the fuck are you talking about? No, he's fine. He's signing the documents.
And he'll say M and you'll say H and your friends say M and it just is a thing.
It's a thing.
And do you both love it?
Yes, and I like nicknames a lot.
Are you fucking dumb?
What could it be? A mystery for the ages.
Meghan had positioned herself as the hunted, the fragile outsider who just wanted peace, just wanted privacy, just wanted to escape the cruelty. But somehow, mysteriously, she never stopped stepping back into the spotlight. Every interview, every documentary, every carefully staged appearance, every calculated reveal disguised as vulnerability. It was like watching someone scream for silence while holding a microphone. And Jimmy saw it. Everyone saw it. The contradictions weren't subtle anymore. They were screaming, loud, desperate, impossible to ignore. Meghan wasn't disappearing. She was expanding. She wasn't escaping attention. She was monetizing it behind closed doors. The whispers had already begun circulating long before Jimmy ever took the stage. Industry insiders murmuring about Soho house nights, about private parties where deals weren't just signed, they were negotiated in shadows, sealed with proximity, influence, and strategic positioning. These weren't confirmed facts. These were rumors. Dangerous rumors. The kind that never fully die. The kind that wait patiently for the right moment to resurface. And now, with Jimmy Carr openly mocking her carefully crafted image, those whispers suddenly felt louder, more believable, more toxic. Because Jimmy didn't just attack Meghan, he dismantled the entire fantasy.
Already settled it for myself, so flattery and criticism go down the same drain. Nothing negative about being a feminist. It's not the F word.
Meghan Markle is, of course, a lifelong feminist, which she's demonstrated by marrying a prince and giving up her job.
That single accusation, calling her the fakest feminist alive, hit like a public execution of her entire brand. And it landed so cleanly because it echoed what millions had already been quietly thinking. Meghan's story was always centered around her pain, her truth, her struggle. But what about accountability? What about the contradictions? What about the pieces that didn't fit the narrative she wanted the world to believe? Every time someone questioned her version of events, they weren't critics, they became villains. Every disagreement became proof of persecution. Every doubt became evidence of oppression. It was a flawless defense mechanism, until it wasn't. And then, There was Harry. Poor Harry. The prince who thought he was escaping control, only to walk straight into another kind of cage, one made not of royal expectations, but of branding contracts, streaming deals, and public sympathy campaigns. Jimmy didn't hesitate to say what others were afraid to say. Harry didn't escape. He transferred ownership. He didn't gain freedom. He became a product.
My friends have to read those things. Like, I have real best friends, the same ones since I was 17.
Really?
You know, like, I'm a real mom. I have to go and I choose to go and do school pickup and drop off, but I do that under a landscape that is created that forgets that I'm a real person. My kids will see those magazines, and we all know moms gossip.
She is a malignant narcissist who cannot get enough of herself while she simultaneously plays the victim.
No, you're not a fucking victim. What are you talking about?
Sure.
That was the moment the illusion truly shattered, because Jimmy exposed something deeper, something darker. Harry wasn't leading this story. He was being carried by it, directed by it, packaged inside it, sold to the world as the wounded prince who sacrificed everything for love. But love wasn't the only currency here. Attention was. Sympathy was. And sympathy paid extremely well. The royal exit wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of their business model. One interview turned into another. Oprah, Netflix, Spotify, magazine covers, endless content fueled by the same narrative of escape, trauma, and injustice. Each retelling polished the story further, refining Meghan's image as both survivor and hero. But the more she spoke, the more cracks appeared. Because people started noticing the pattern. Privacy wasn't the goal. Control was. Control over perception. Control over narrative. Control over truth itself. Jimmy Carr understood that. And he weaponized it with brutal efficiency. He mocked the hypocrisy. He mocked the contradictions. He mocked the carefully constructed victimhood that somehow always resulted in massive financial gain. And the audience laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt true. That was the most dangerous part. Truth doesn't need proof when it feels emotionally convincing. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the fallout was spreading. Media insiders began distancing themselves. Contracts that once seemed guaranteed suddenly became uncertain. Public opinion wasn't just shifting, it was hardening. People weren't sympathizing anymore. They were questioning, and once the questioning begins, the entire illusion becomes fragile. Meghan had spent years mastering perception. She knew exactly how to present herself, how to cry at the right moment, how to speak with controlled vulnerability, how to frame every setback as injustice. But Jimmy Carr didn't play by those rules. He didn't care about her image. He didn't care about her narrative. He cared about the punchline. And in doing so, he exposed something far more devastating than any rumor. He exposed the performance itself. Because once people start seeing someone as an actor, every emotion looks rehearsed. Every tear looks calculated. Every statement looks strategic. Authenticity becomes impossible to prove once doubt takes root. And doubt was everywhere now. Social media erupted. Supporters scrambled to defend her. Critics piled on mercilessly. Clips of Jimmy's brutal takedowns spread like wildfire, replayed millions of times. Each replay reinforcing the same brutal question no one wanted to answer openly. Was Meghan ever really the victim, or was she the architect of her own mythology? The yacht rumors didn't need confirmation. They didn't need evidence. Their power wasn't in proof, it was in timing. They resurfaced at the exact moment her credibility was already under attack. And perception is reality in the world Meghan operates in. Once perception turns hostile, recovery becomes nearly impossible, because Hollywood doesn't forgive weakness, and the royal family doesn't forget betrayal. Jimmy Carr didn't destroy Meghan Markle, he simply accelerated something that was already happening. He pulled forward a collapse that had been building quietly for years beneath the surface of carefully curated perfection. The humiliation wasn't just public. It was permanent. And the most terrifying part for Meghan wasn't the jokes, it was the silence that followed. Because silence means people are no longer defending you. Silence means they're watching. Silence means they're waiting to see what falls apart next. That silence wasn't empty. It was loaded, heavy, dangerous. Because when the laughter fades and the cameras stop flashing, what remains is perception, and Meghan's perception was unraveling faster than she could contain it. The carefully curated image of the misunderstood outsider was being replaced by something far more threatening to her legacy, the possibility that people were no longer buying it. And once the audience stops believing, the entire performance collapses. Jimmy Carr didn't just humiliate her in that moment, he shifted the emotional balance. Suddenly, Meghan wasn't the untouchable symbol of empowerment she had spent years presenting. She became vulnerable, exposed, human. And in Hollywood, vulnerability without control is fatal because Meghan's entire power came from narrative dominance. She controlled the story. She controlled the tone. She controlled the emotional framing. Every interview had intention. Every tear had timing. Every revelation had strategic value. But Jimmy didn't follow her script. He broke it. Publicly. Brutally. And once someone breaks your script, you lose control of how the story is told. Behind the scenes, insiders began noticing subtle changes. Invitations became less frequent. Executives became quieter. Conversations became shorter. Not hostile, just distant. And distance in Hollywood is never accidental. It's calculated. It's protective. Because nobody wants to be associated with a collapsing narrative. Meghan's greatest strength had always been her ability to reinvent herself. From actress to duchess. From duchess to victim. From victim to global brand. But reinvention only works when the audience is willing to follow you. And now, that willingness was fading. The Netflix deal had once symbolized victory. Proof that she didn't need the royal family. Proof that she could build her own empire. But empires built on emotional storytelling require continuous emotional credibility, and credibility was now under siege. People weren't watching her documentaries with sympathy anymore. They were watching with skepticism, with suspicion, with curiosity about what wasn't being said. Because once doubt enters the audience's mind, every past moment becomes suspect. Every tear becomes questionable. Every claim becomes debatable. And Jimmy Carr's humiliation didn't create that doubt. It simply legitimized it. Meanwhile, Harry stood beside her, still loyal, still committed, still emotionally invested in the story they had built together. But his presence now raised uncomfortable questions. Not about his love for Meghan, but about his independence. Jimmy had mocked him as a puppet, a product, a prince, who traded one controller for another. And while it was meant as comedy, it struck something deeper, something painfully believable. Harry had spent his entire life inside systems of control. First the monarchy, then the media, and now possibly a brand machine that depended on his trauma to survive. His pain wasn't just personal anymore. It was monetized, packaged, distributed globally. And Meghan was at the center of that machine, not as a villain, not as a hero, but as its architect of the yacht rumors resurfacing at this exact moment added fuel to a fire that was already burning out of control. Again, they didn't need proof. They didn't need verification. Their existence alone was enough to destabilize her carefully constructed identity. Because perception isn't built on facts, it's built on belief. And belief was slipping through her fingers. Public opinion is the most ruthless judge. It doesn't follow rules. It doesn't require fairness. It operates on emotional instinct. And emotionally, people were beginning to disconnect from Meghan's narrative. They weren't angry. They weren't sympathetic. They were indifferent. And indifference is worse than hate. Because hate still means people care. Indifference means they've moved on. The humiliation Jimmy Carr inflicted wasn't just about jokes. It was about permission. Permission for others to question her. Permission for critics to speak louder. Permission for doubt to exist publicly without fear of backlash. Once that permission exists, the floodgates opened. Commentators became more aggressive. Social media became more brutal. Support became quieter. And Meghan's greatest weapon, public sympathy, became unreliable. This was the moment where reality and performance collided, where the character she had created could no longer fully protect the person behind it. Because maintaining a global image requires constant reinforcement, constant validation, constant belief from the audience. And belief was cracking. Every move she made now carried higher risk. Every appearance would be analyzed more harshly, every word dissected, every expression scrutinized for authenticity. The margin for error was gone, because humiliation changes everything. It alters perception permanently. It creates a before and after. Before, Jimmy Carr humiliated Meghan Markle, and after. Before, she controlled the narrative. After, the narrative began controlling her. The most dangerous part wasn't the rumors. It wasn't the jokes. It wasn't the criticism. It was the loss of narrative monopoly. Because once Meghan lost exclusive control over her own story, she became vulnerable to interpretations she couldn't manage. And stories, once released into the public, develop lives of their own. They evolve. They mutate. They spread beyond control. Jimmy Carr didn't just make people laugh. he made people question. And questions are far more destructive than accusations. That accusations can be denied, questions linger, questions grow, questions destroy certainty. And certainty was the foundation of Meghan's entire public identity. Now, and certainty surrounded her. The empire she built wasn't collapsing overnight. But something had shifted, something invisible but undeniable. The emotional contract between Meghan and the public had been weakened. And once that contract breaks, rebuilding it becomes nearly impossible. Because people never see you the same way again. They remember the humiliation. They remember the doubt. They remember the moment the illusion cracked. And Jimmy Carr, with nothing but words and timing, had triggered that moment. Not by exposing facts, but by exposing perception. And perception, once broken, never fully heals.